Welcome to Everyday Counseling, a podcast exploring how emotional pattern shapes everyday experience. In this episode, we're looking at how growing confidence changes the way challenges are experienced, not by removing the difficulty, but by altering how it's held. When confidence develops through tolerating discomfort, challenges don't disappear. What changes the relationship to them? Situations that once felt overwhelming begin to feel workable, even when they're still demanding. One of the first shifts people notice is a change in scale. Challenges no longer feel all consuming. A difficult conversation is still uncomfortable, but it doesn't dominate the entire day. A setback still matters, but it doesn't define everything else. This happens because confidence changes how the nervous system responds to stress. When the system trusts that it can cope, it doesn't need to escalate as quickly. Activation still happens, but it stays within a more manageable range. You might recognize this in how you approach tasks that used to trigger anxiety. You still feel the edge of discomfort, but you don't feel stuck by it. You begin rather than waiting for the feeling to pass. Another change is in how long challenges linger internally. Instead of replaying events repeatedly, attention moves on more naturally. Reflection still happens but is less charged. The system doesn't stay activated once the situation has ended. Confidence also affects how people interpret difficulty. Challenges are less likely to be seen as evidence of failure or inadequacy. They're understood as part of life rather than personal shortcomings. This shift can be subtle. You might notice that your inner language softens. Instead of, I can't handle this, it becomes, this is difficult but manageable. The words matter less than the tone behind them. Confidence built through tolerance also changes how people prepare for challenges. Preparation becomes practical rather than defensive. Instead of trying to anticipate every possible outcome, people focus on what's realistically within their control. You might see this when facing uncertainty. Rather than rehearsing worst case scenarios, you prepare enough and then allow the rest to unfold. That allowance reduces mental load. Another everyday change is how people respond when things don't go as planned. Instead of immediate self criticism or urgency to fix everything, there's more room to assess what's actually needed. That response becomes measured rather than reactive. This doesn't mean people stop caring. Often, they care more effectively. Energy isn't spent managing internal distress, so it's available for problem solving or communication. Confidence also affects how support is used. Instead of seeking reassurance to reduce anxiety, people seek perspective or collaboration. Support becomes a resource rather than a stabilizer. Earlier in the series, we explored how reassurance temporarily reduces anxiety but doesn't build tolerance. Confidence built through experience changes that dynamic. People still value connection, but they're less dependent on it to function. Over time, challenges begin to feel less personal. They're no longer interpreted as tests of worth or competence. They're situations to respond to rather than threats to your identity or to a person's identity. You might notice this in how you talk about difficulties afterward. There's less need to justify yourself, less need to explain why something was hard. The experience stands on its own. Another important change is flexibility. When confidence grows, people are more willing to adjust plans, change directions, or try again. Setbacks don't signal the end, they signal the need to adapt. This flexibility is often what people describe as resilience. Not toughness, but their ability to move with difficulty rather than against it. What's important to remember is that this kind of confidence doesn't eliminate emotional responses. Frustration, anxiety, and disappointment still appear. The difference is that they no longer derail engagement. As a result, every day, life feels less effortful. Not because it's easier, but because less energy is spent resisting experience. Confidence becomes something lived rather than felt. It's evidence in action, recovery, and perspective rather than in how calm someone feels. In the next episode, we'll look at how this steadier confidence influences decision making under pressure and why people often make clearer choices once challenges feel less threatening.